Hi guys, another question of prelims 2022 that is solvable with the help of PYQs is given on the rightmost part of your screen in the column headed prelims 2022 question. Now this question was very tricky because many students did mistake in solving this question. Many students got confused and did not attempt this question. But if we have gone through the relevant PYQs and the NCRTs, this question was not very difficult. In fact, this was a question which could be done through both knowledge as well as elimination, and we are going to see both the approaches today. So the question of 2022 I'm talking about is asking you to identify nitrogen fixing plants. It gave you 6 plants and asked you which of these are nitrogen fixing, and then of course the various combinations of these 6 plants. Look at the respective PYQ. It appeared in the year 1979 and it asked which of the following crops helps in nitrogen fixation, right? So 4 crops were given and you were asked which of these 4 helps in nitrogen fixation. The answer to this question is delta. Delta is beans, right? So beans helps in nitrogen fixation. Now this particular aspect is not directly helping us in solving the 2022 question, but what is significant here is that this theme of nitrogen fixation has been asked multiple times. In fact, if we look at the particular type of question of which we have the 1979 version here, where 4 crops are mentioned and it is asked which of these are fixing nitrogen, or kinds of crops are given, legumes, certain 3 other kinds of crops would be given, and then which of these kinds help in nitrogen fixation. This kind of question has been asked at least 3 times. This is the first one. 2 more times, I guess 2 or 3 more times it has been asked. I will put all of them in the PDF, but it gives us the idea that these kind of questions are really important. Nitrogen fixation is an extremely important aspect which everybody is supposed to know. The knowledge about nitrogen fixation starts all the way from your class 6th NCRT, right? Multiple different kinds of crops are given in multiple different years from class 6. You cannot miss nitrogen fixation, rhizobium, etc., all of those leguminous plants varieties. So this is a question which is solvable through NCRT. If you have gone through this particular 1979 question and the other 2-3 questions which I'm talking about, you will know that this variety, this particular aspect is asked. 2022 also asked this exact variety, just the number of plants were increased. So you would be conscious when you read this particular aspect of nitrogen fixation in your NCRT. Now, when I talk about NCRT, and this is the knowledge version of solving the question, 2022 question, knowledge aspect of solving the question. The NCRTs are clearly telling about alfalfa. I'm talking about the class 11th biology NCRT. It talks about alfalfa. It talks about peas, right, which includes chickpeas, and it talks about clover. Other mentions also are there. Sweet clover is mentioned, and some other varieties of plants also are mentioned in the context of nitrogen fixing, rhizobium, this thing. But these 3 have been mentioned. The NCRTs also specifically say that most variety of pulses do nitrogen fixation. Chickpea comes under pulse category, so there's a very high chance that chickpea will be fixing nitrogen. So if you want to go through the knowledge route, 1, 3 and 4 have to be in the answer. And if we look at the options, 1, 3 and 4 is there only in one option, that is alpha, right? So this is the knowledge way of solving this particular question. Now let me just clear the screen first, and then we'll talk about the elimination technique of solving this question. Right, so come to the 1979 question once again. It says, which of these crops helps in nitrogen fixation? Nitrogen fixation is an extremely important activity, right? It's very important. Right from class 6th it is talked about. Rice, wheat and maize are very common crops. Now if rice, wheat or maize, if any of these common crops were fixing nitrogen, would it not be mentioned in your books? And would you have not studied that aspect? You would be certainly aware of that thing, right? You would have heard that thing. Now this is the elimination technique that I'm coming to. The technique, I've named it as would have heard technique, right? And when does it work? When you have this kind of combination wherein you are having, for example, this very important process which you will not miss reading about, nitrogen fixation, rhizobium, etc. Very important things, you will not miss reading about them. And you have such common crops, such important crops also which are mentioned, rice, wheat, maize. If any of these three would be fixing nitrogen, for sure 200% guarantee it is the NCRTs would be mentioning. Because if the NCRTs are mentioning about beans, if the NCRT are mentioning about clover, right, they will for sure mention about rice, wheat and maize, also such common crops, you know, if they were doing such important activity. This means that if you have a common crop, and if that common crop is not mentioned, or you have never heard about that common crop doing nitrogen fixation, most likely that crop does not do nitrogen fixation. And with this approach, this is the elimination approach that I'm talking about, would have heard approach, come to the sixth entry of 2022 prelims question, that is spinach. Spinach is a very common crop, nitrogen fixation, really important activity. We have never heard about spinach doing nitrogen fixation, right? So most likely spinach does not do nitrogen fixation. If it does not do nitrogen fixation, let us remove sixth entry. Sixth is there in 3 out of 4 options, right? So we can eliminate B, C and D, and automatically we arrive at the answer, that is alpha. Right. So I discussed one of the elimination techniques which I have observed and refined over these years in this particular question. But the reason behind doing that is, and the previous year questions, they help you directly, yes, but they also help you in thinking in ways which indirectly help you in solving questions, in certain questions which you are not aware of probably. In this particular question, in fact, here clover might be something complicated, right? Amaranth, PURSLANE, KULFA, we have never heard of amaranth and PURSLANE in the context of nitrogen fixing, but these were not very common crops. But spinach is a really common crop, so we can approach this particular question through the would have heard approach, and we would get to the answer. So I hope guys you like this elimination technique also, in addition to whatever we have been discussing in this video series of the repeat questions analysis. And there are certain questions in relation to nitrogen fixation. I'll put them, the directly related ones, in the PDF, and the indirect ones in the Telegram group, and all the details regarding the purchase of the repeat questions analysis PDF will be given in the description of this video. Thank you for joining me today. See you next time.